step in your river, and it takes me deep. Your heart is my temple, your tears rinse my feet. I walk out, I'm able to carry your peace. It reminds me of a song that I heard long ago. Maybe I've always known that you were right there. A simple melody playing over and over in my dreams.
3, 2, Wizun. What is up, everybody? We're live. We are here. It is episode 120. This is the 120th episode of the Young Lion TV podcast. We're in the room.
120.
120, baby.
That's a good number.
Yeah, that's a good number. So we're going to get into things. Going to have some good conversation. We're going to go deep on some stuff. So let's get into it. You're watching Young Lion TV. All right, and we're back. The intro did not work for some reason. We don't know why. Okay. Did you move Did you move it? I don't think so. Okay. Well, anyway, we're back. I got
all good.
It's all good, man. We're gonna keep it moving, keep it rolling. Shout out to everybody in the chat who please hit the like button, hit the share button, share this video, let people know that we're live right now. Please let the algorithm pick us up so we can, get people in on this conversation. We want to hear people's opinions. We want people to chime in. We want to get this conversation to more ears. So please hit the share button, hit the like button. Also, leave a comment saying hello. Let us know where you're from. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Young Lion TV, on YouTube. You can go over there and hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you know every time we go live, every time we post something new. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Young Lion TV. Please sign up over there if you want to become a member. If you want to become a member, that's the YouTube there. But the Patreon, shout out to all the Patreon members that are in the building. For all those that want to support, please just sign up. You could pick whichever tier you want. Everything that you guys sign up for is going back into what we're doing. It also goes into funding other like-minded communities and channels that we believe in. We're all about trying to build a culture and a community around the right way of thinking about things. So support that. Go to the Patreon. That's the best way to do it right now. Or you can hit us on the Cash App, which is $ Young Lion TV. You can scan that right there. Boom, and you in there. Hit us with a donation if you just want to support, throw some money to the cause. We're constantly buying what.
No, I was going to say $1.
Even if it's $1, whatever you want to show some love, we appreciate it because trust me, everything you guys send us has been going into us upgrading equipment, upgrading the content that we're doing, and it frees us up to be able to do more content, which is the goal. I'm trying to see if I can center myself. Okay. That's the goal. We want to do more content. We want to keep bringing you guys more and more stuff. So the more support we get, it frees us up to be able to do that so we can do more video. We can have more people working on editing. We can have more people working on. We even want to go through all the podcasts. We want to start making clips of everything. Simone's been making thumbnails for us so we can really take this thing to the next level. Jake's been working on some content, some breakdowns of some serious stuff that we're going to be putting on the Patreon and also putting on YouTube and stuff like that. So we need the support, guys. But after that, shout out, we got Stiz in the room.
What up?
We got Jake. Me and Jake are both rocking they do look extra orange for some reason. I don't know why. We got me and Jake both rocking the Jatan merch. Forgot to mention that. If you want to get T-shirts or if you want to get our music, you can go to our website, jatan.com. And we got a lot of new music coming soon. We got to perform a little bit of it over the weekend, which was nice.
At the show.
Good time.
Does my mic sound weird to you guys?
No, it sounds good.
It sounds weird in my ears. Anyway, at the show, Jakey was there. Not the last show, but the show a couple weeks ago. He was like, "It's so cool. My face is on merch."
I know, right? I know. Him and Layla are on our artwork.
Yeah,
Joey came on nice, man.
It did, man. It did. But yeah, that's got to be cool for him to see his face on the merch.
Yeah.
He didn't really get it at the time, but
No, but he watches YouTube channels now, and
yeah.
he
He knows
sees
what
other
merch
people.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. But
Shout out to Chang, Mr. Changer.
Chang's
What up?
in the building. What's up, Moan?
Oompa loompa.
Oompa Loompas. He said y'all look like Oompa Loompas. That's your camera, Moan. We don't know what's going on. It's everything is set the right way.
It don't look orange on the, well, at least on the phone.
I look extra white though. That's the problem. I look extra white. And go back to them.
And for them, it's the camera. The camera's doing something.
So for me, the lighting is white, and for them, the
It
camera.
don't look bad though.
They actually look better than me. I look like a super pale ghost on the Facebook stream. Those dudes actually look like humans. Huh?
Jake looks like he belongs in the islands.
But yeah, so we had a show this weekend. It was a lot of us. We all had to man together to like pull the show off. It was pretty cool though.
Yeah.
We got to perform all of our new songs in front of people.
Nice outdoor.
Yeah. Foster Square in Voorhees, New Jersey. We did their Christmas party a couple years ago, and they wanted to do like an outdoor pool party for the residents, so they invited us out, which is cool for me because it's like literally across the street from my
Down
house.
the street.
Yeah. So that was easy, but the property manager over there, Sue, shout out to her. She, even today was telling me that people are still talking about how much they enjoyed it, how much they loved our music, and she said, to let her know when we're doing a show, she'll put it up on the bulletin board so people can come out.
Yeah, they came out on their balconies,
Were they? I didn't even.
Yeah,
I didn't
it
even
was-
notice
it was
that.
A couple up there.
Oh, they
to
were
the right.
Okay. They were
And,
watching on the balconies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, that's cool.
Yeah,
Come
that
out
is
your
cool.
back door and you could get a show.
Yeah, it was actually surprising because we're playing and you only see the people that are in front of you. And then I remember like at one point we got done a song and I like was turning around to do something and I saw all those people behind
Yeah.
us and I was like, oh crap. I didn't
Even at the
realize-
pool.
Yeah.
Did y'all see the pool?
I could barely see it from where we were because there
Okay.
was the trees in our line of sight. But
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But when I would say, are the people at the pool out there, they would scream. I could hear them, so that's cool, man. It was a cool little show. It was good to, get out there and do some shows again. I'm glad we're able to do our music.
Especially out in the open.
Yeah, man. Open. It's one of the new songs.
Wasn't too hot either.
I know.
The tent came through.
Yeah.
Mike with the tent.
Shout out to the team, man. Everybody pulled together and pulled that off. Rachel was our official tent weight for like half of the show because it got windy
Once
out there.
the wind kicked up.
Got windy out there. And she
That's why she was standing over
yes,
there. I didn't know.
she hopped right into gear and like anchored that tent down. Yeah, yeah, and she saw it right. And for the rest of the show, she was just like, "I'm gonna just hold this tent for the rest of the show."
Funny thing, I was because I was filming it, that little section that we did, I filmed it, but when my leg went numb,
Yeah.
like because I was leaning weird,
Yeah.
So when the tent started going, I went to get up, and my leg
And you was like,
I
"Oh."
almost got buckled.
Old man problems.
Like, man, it's getting old. It's terrible.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Mom said it looks fine. Okay.
Oh, cool.
So shout out to Moan, man. He's home right now, hanging out with the family. But we miss you. We'll, always want you here. So we'll see you next week. Well, we'll see you tomorrow at rehearsal.
Right,
but I mean, on the podcast, we'll see you next week. Yeah. So other than that, we had the show. What's been going on? Nothing much. Let's look at what's been going on Twitter. So.
We got a resignation happen today.
Oh, yeah, that's breaking news. That's breaking news.
Yep.
Cuomo?
Yeah,
Cuomo's
Cuomo
up outta
resigned.
there.
He resigned. Now, I only saw this like when we were on our way to load in, so I really didn't get the details of this, like what made him finally, because he said he wasn't going to resign,
Yeah.
but I guess he was getting too much pressure from.
Too much pressure, and then once the what does they call her? I don't know.
The aide?
Accuser one. Yeah, the aide.
Yeah.
She did an interview on CBS, I think.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she came out, so it's no longer a mystery. So
Okay.
I guess that pressure and from the pressure from the slaters, that probably all.
And the president.
Yeah, the
and
president said he should
stuck
resign.
by
Should
his
resign.
word.
Yeah.
President.
Yeah.
But somebody said that he should be like, oh, I should resign, huh? Let's go ask Tara Reid who should resign. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he could have did that, but he didn't go there. But yeah, dude, so he's resigning. But isn't it funny how like Chris Cuomo conveniently goes on vacation?
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he went on vacation like so that he wouldn't have to face any of this
'cause he
during
was
his
protecting
broadcast.
him.
Yeah, because he wouldn't talk about it.
Yep.
People were pointing out how like even all the other shows on CNN, that was like the lead story for a lot of shows because it was front page New York Times. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when his show came up, lead story was like, of course, like January 6th or something.
Yeah. Or COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he refuses to talk about it. That's his brother.
Now he can't and it turns out from the investigation that he was actually helping them try to cover it up.
Yeah, giving him advice on what to do.
What to say.
Yeah. And he was getting access to early COVID treatments and testing before anybody else because his brother was the governor, which is like, this is all stuff we know they do. But it's like...
Don't make it right, but...
No, but I'm saying like what it does is it makes it a fact because people can always say like, oh, you're overthinking it. You know what I mean? They don't want to believe that this is how people move in politics. And like, a lot of people are still asleep to the fact that these politicians are this corrupt, that they prioritize their friends and family and that they, they're always,
it's always something that's behind it.
Yeah.
Another agenda.
You have to live by rules, but we are above the rules.
Well, speaking
of that, that's what I was going to just bring up.
Obama.
That's what I was going to bring up because I had this clip. Did y'all see the clip that Erykah Badu posted?
Did she delete it?
She had to delete it afterwards. Yeah. All right, let me play that real quick. Pull this up, John. So this went super viral on Twitter because this is inside their outdoor masked gathering that they had for his birthday party.
Quote unquote mask.
Yeah.
Is that Obama?
That's Obama right there doing a little jig. They still calling him the first black president dancing like that. That is a damn shame. Look at it. But look, he gives the lady a hug, all of that. So, of course, that went super crazy viral on Twitter because she immediately took it down. But people ripped that thing so fast that everyone was posting it because it was like, at the same time, Fauci was going in on some bike rally.
Oh yeah, Sturgis bike
Sturgis bike rally, saying
South
like this is
Dakota.
a super spreader event. These people don't care about lives.
Yeah.
But this dude had like a multi-100 person
it was supposed
birthday
to be like
party.
900 people.
Yeah, and they said we're scaling it
down
back
to 700.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Rules for thee,
but not for me. Yeah, but again, it's then they wonder why people don't want to believe what you're trying to sell us because it's like you pick and choose what you care about. Fauci didn't say nothing about this event.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then like there was a clip of an anchor on CNN who came on and was like, "Well, these are sophisticated people that they're vaccinated." And sophisticated people, this is not something we need to worry about. Like,
not you, monkey.
right. You're not allowed to have a 700 person birthday party
outside.
Yeah, no, inside. Because did you see it? It was a giant tent indoor building, basically
with walls.
Yeah. So that happened.
Hilarious, man.
And then I saw this
sophisticated vaccinated people.
Right.
Mon said.
That's what he said, Mo.
Yeah, I think that's what the anchor said.
Yeah, Stephanie said, so true. Shout out to everybody watching. Please share the video, guys. So then I saw this on Twitter. I thought this was pretty hilarious. So Candace Cameron, everybody knows her from as DJ from Full House, right?
Oh yeah.
And her brother's Kirk Cameron, who was also an actor, and now he's like a pastor, blah, blah, blah. She's a super, outspoken Christian. So she did a TikTok where she was like dancing to some Lana Del Rey song. And she's holding a Bible. So then she had to apologize for this video. I saw this on CNN. She lip syncs to Lana Del Rey's Jealous Girl while holding a Bible.
I just came home and read a lot of messages that were not happy with my latest Instagram post. That was a TikTok video. And I usually don't apologize for these things, but a lot of you thought it was weird, and I'm sorry. That was not my intention. So many of you thought that I was trying to be seductive, which clearly means I'm not a very good actress, because I was trying to be strong, not sexy.
Baby, I'm a gangster too, and it takes two to tango. You don't wanna dance with me, dance.
Natasha had actually just used that clip. That's where I saw it, on her TikTok. And so I was trying to do my own version of it with the Bible and talk about the Holy Spirit and the power of the Holy Spirit, that basically nothing can trump the Holy Spirit. And we only know that by reading the Bible. Maybe I was just trying to be too cool or relevant in a biblical way that didn't work.
Okay, thoughts?
Who cares? I mean, I mean, yeah. Like,
I mean, there's something to be said here.
If she's doing that, she's doing that. Like, I don't think it matters, but that they're criticizing it, yeah, that's like, okay, that's to be, I don't know.
So they said
how are you seeing it? Because I don't, like, it's like, to me, it's like, who cares?
I don't think she was too seductive, but
No, I see it a bunch of ways. I see it that, like, in the Christian community, we're being too critical of everything. Everyone is ready to pick every little thing apart,
right,
and talk about why it doesn't measure up. But also, you put yourself out there to be critiqued when you are trying too hard to fit in with and connect with
the culture,
the young people, the culture that, like, clearly, if you look on TikTok or like Instagram Reels, it's a bunch of young people trying to get attention or trying to look attractive and seductive. So that's where these people are coming from with her doing that. It's because they're tying her in with that culture of TikTok. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's a lot of TikTokers that do other things.
I know, but for the most part, the most part, and when people, most of the time when people are lip syncing to songs, like when she referenced her daughter's video, what's her daughter doing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So she's trying to, put that focus on the Bible, but using the tactic of something that's already designed to
draw you
distract people away from that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I see that it's like a parallel for what I see the church do a lot of times, where it's like, well, if we get some young rappers in here and some, then we can reach the youth. You know what I mean? We can be a part of what's going on in the culture.
What's the song is Jealous Girl?
Jealous Girl, Lana Del Rey.
Is it? I don't know the song. So
I don't know, man.
I don't know the content of the
Lana
song.
Del Rey's music is just like, it just gives me a weird feeling. You know what I mean?
I mean, she should have spun it. Well, jealous God, don't serve any other gods. Focus on this. I don't know. Could have spun it that way.
I just think you put yourself out there, people are going to try to tear you down, especially like on TikTok. Like, you doing TikTok videos in the style of what all these teenagers are doing,
Yeah, but if it gets shared a bunch of times, and like, what book is she holding?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
If she's trying, she's trying. Like you make
Yeah.
mistakes and you learn, and
Maybe somebody
And-
go look at the Bible. I don't, from that.
like
It's a
yeah,
It's just to
It's a
me,
stretch,
like
but-
it's just cringy. Okay, it's cringy. Like I see, it
It's
seems like you're trying too hard. It doesn't connect. It's totally a miss to me, and I think we do that too much.
yeah, but that's where we learn. You know, that's our own attempts at trying to do something, which is what you're basically saying. But
Is it right?
I just think like that's the critical thing where should we be too critical of that, like, or should we be like people are gonna learn. You just got to focus them in the right direction, because some people are trying and they have a heart for something, but
Yeah.
they're doing it out of their own.
Yeah,
And
I
then
definitely think she has a heart for like wanting people to know about Jesus, and you know what I mean. But I think I think we still fall victim to. We have to do it their way. You know what I mean? Instead of
Right.
letting God lead
Show
us
you.
in how we should be doing it. You know, it's always like, well, how's everyone else doing it? How can we make it look a lot like that? You know what I mean?
Well, that's why, like, when you fall on your face and make a mistake, you realize, like, maybe that's when you humble yourself. You know, you should, and maybe I'll seek God and how to do things.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's how I'm looking at it.
Okay, moving on.
Great.
All right, so I want to play a series, a series of videos, because this is like crazy. I saw all of these like back to back to back. This channel on Twitter called Libs of TikTok. It's pretty hilarious. It's like Libs of TikTok. So it basically
So
like
liberals.
curates all of the crazy liberal posts and like shows them to you. So I kind of showed this one last week with Joy and Peace, but it was after the podcast. So I'm going to play this one first, and we'll discuss.
I made a really loud, yelly video about this, but I decided I will approach this in a more calm but stern manner. A lot of the people using kitty and pup and bunny self-pronouns are neurodivergent minors. It is a very common neurodivergent experience to feel a disconnect from being human and from the societal expectation of the gender you were assigned at birth. So when you have this intersection of feeling a disconnect from being human and a disconnect from the societal expectation of gender, whether you're neurodivergent or not, a lot of people have this experience who aren't neurodivergent. It's just very common with neurodivergent people. When this intersects, you get noun self pronouns and animal noun self pronouns. If you are not comfortable using someone's pronouns because you assume it's kink for some weird ass reason, don't interact with them and just shut up about it.
Okay.
All right.
Did you guys understand what she was saying there? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you learn something?
That's a whole nother language, right?
Did you learn
That's
something?
a whole nother language.
Okay. Okay. Well, it doesn't end there. Let's keep it moving to this lovely.
I noticed a lot of people being really confused about the difference between being scoliosexual and being T for T. Being scoliosexual is when a cis person says that they are exclusively attracted to trans and non-binary people, which is pretty fetishistic. Being T for T isn't a separate sexuality, it's more of a dating preference within your sexuality. Usually people have a reason to be T for T. Usually this has to do with safety, because dating cis people isn't always safe. This can have to do with feeling comfortable around your partner because you don't want to feel like you're like a walking trans educator all the time. People don't realize all the extra work that goes into being a trans person dating a cis person. It can also just be you want to date someone who has a similar life experience to you and understands what you're going through. This is very understandable and not fetishistic at all. But yeah, that's the difference.
Okay. Are you learning? Are you learning?
I think I'm going to go to sleep.
Are you learning? Like, and the thing is, like, I can see this turning into science, like a science,
A sign.
a learned, like, there's so many.
Applied.
To me, this is like when we're in the hood and they like, yo, you ain't up on this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you ain't,
I'm
you
schooling
don't
you.
understand
I'm
this
schooling
lingo. Like, let me break it down for you. This means that, like, it's a language that they're doing for their own benefit.
Right.
You know.
It's like when people start speaking, like they learn the language of some alien life force on Star Trek. You know what I mean? And they like, but let's keep it going because it's not over. Let's
It
let's
sounds
hit
like
the
you're
next
dealing with split personalities.
one.
Gender euphoria, the best way I can describe that is like fully recognizing yourself, seeing yourself the way you want to be perceived. So like a lot of people when they get top surgery for the first time, they're going to feel a lot of gender euphoria because they're seeing themselves, as they want to be perceived. So for people like me who want to be perceived as more of a thing than a person, doing stuff like this, intense makeup or clown makeup, like that's obviously going to make me feel gender euphoria because I feel like myself. I feel like I recognize myself. Gender euphoria, the best way I can describe that is like...
That's that one.
So you want to make yourself look like a demon.
Right.
Because that's how you
because
feel.
You want it because you identify as a thing.
As a thing, yep.
And then, this is from the same channel. Someone else
Gender is a
schooling
cultural
everybody.
construct, specifically a culturally constructed caste system designed to oppress women and benefit men. Woman is not a feeling. I don't feel like an anything. It's a social class determined by your material condition in a patriarchal society. Cis women have their reproductive organs regulated by government legislation with abortion bans and birth control restrictions. Both cis and trans women are systemically raped, sex trafficked, fetishized in porn, and abused by their male partners. Men, on the other hand, literally run the fucking world. They own the vast majority of wealth, land, industries, enterprises, and political power. The reason men commit crimes like rape and domestic violence on a structural level is not because of their DNA, but because of gendered socialization. And it's important for women to examine the ways that we've been socialized as well. Why do we feel ugly when we don't wear makeup or shave? Why do we fake orgasms during sex, prioritizing our partner's ego over our own comfort or pleasure? Why do we constantly apologize for just existing? We need to stop socializing people into the roles of men and women, which are inherently patriarchal, and instead allow people to live as individuals and form their own self-expression. Feminism should be about gender abolition, not gender.
So men and women, the idea of men and women is patriarchal, guys. Are you learning, Rachel? Are you learning? Okay. It's patriarchal.
Right.
But so only those genders are patriarchal. But if you add, if you break down the nuances of, what was the other one? Neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
That's that.
What about the thing?
Right. Those are not a system of the patriarchy. Those are tearing down.
Yeah.
But everything that she just said in that video was a whole bunch of nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. And then moving on.
Uh-oh.
So this is a different. This one I thought was just very ironic. And see if you can spot the irony. If you can't spot the irony in this video, we got to have a conversation.
If you're white and you think that your opinion should be shared on a topic you don't know much about and you never really cared or want to listen to the things black and brown people have to say, don't be a clown, just shut the fuck up and continue about your day.
Oh. She speaks for me. Or is it? Hold on.
But
I done messed up.
What?
They speak for me?
I don't know. But to me, the irony is the person is saying that if you're white and you have an opinion, shut the hell up. But you're not doing that.
Because you look like a clown.
You're not doing
But she looks like a clown with her hair.
But maybe she's connected to the other person with the, she was saying clown play or whatever.
Right.
Clown makeup is a part of, it's a part of it.
Yeah, Naomi said, good evening, everyone. Stephanie said, are you kidding me? That's true, but she so went about it the wrong way. Stephanie said that.
Bone said, no, I don't understand.
I'm like over these videos.
Simone said, come on, DJ. Wow, DJ.
Oh, DJ, yeah, DJ talking about Full House. All right, cool. So that's all I have from Twitter.
Does Twitter mean anything?
No,
in
man.
another language? Is it like
No.
Babel?
No, I think it's literally started this trend. It's been the trend for like the last 15 years or so, where it's like you have to come up with the most ridiculous name for an app in order for it to catch on, you know, or for a software program. I think it pretty much got big from Yahoo, because before Yahoo, like, there really wasn't. Then you had Google. That was after, you know. YouTube's not bad, but then Twitter, you know, Bumble, all these, like, it's always like these weird, you know, names, because that's like the trend. People jump on trends all the time. It's like the trend is to have a goofy name for your app so people remember it, you know.
Right.
All right, so again, shout out to everybody who's watching. Hello to Ariana. Hello to Migdalia. Hello to Naomi.
I do want to say that a lot of that stuff, because we're going to talk about critical race theory, right? And a lot of that stuff does come from critical theory, comes from postmodernism, and so it's connected to a whole way of thinking and a whole way of wording things and breaking things down. That's why when we're talking, like, if you talk to people like that, it's almost like, what? Because they're talking past you. They're redefining things, which is literally what they're doing.
Right.
Like not just redefining things in themselves, redefining words that mean something. They're redefining them. So when they say these words, you don't even get it, because they're saying something that means different to them based off of this postmodernism and realism ideas that they've been learning in these schools.
All right, so break down what postmodernist is.
Is it like the new Enlightenment movement?
Modernism. Let me see if I think I wrote this down somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Just to make it easy. Let me see. Okay, postmodernism is a theory that involves a radical reappraisal of modern assumption about culture, about identity, about history, about language. It's a critical project. So it's about critiquing. And it's a critical project revealing the cultural constructions. So when they're talking about these social constructs, right, they're deconstructing it to show you what's going on. They think they've already done the deconstruction, and they go through this process of deconstruction. It's the whole point of it. Right.
And that's something that you're seeing happen real big in the church now, is this whole idea of deconstruction.
Right. And so, and then you look at it through your own lens. That's what makes it bad, because it's like everybody can deconstruct it in their own way.
Right.
Because it's about your own opinion.
And you can pull out the pieces that fit into the ideas that you have about things already.
Right. I'll continue. It's a critical project revealing the cultural construction, and we designate as truth, and opening up a variety of repressed. What? I guess I wrote this down. Something about repressed histories of modernity, which is modern society, right? Through even science and all these things, it came out of like the Enlightenment era. But also, I would say the First Great Awakening, because they're kind of connected. We talked about this on here. So things such as those of women, homosexuals, and the colonized. So modernists have a canon, and it itself is revealed as the patriarchal and And so the patriarchal, racist, dominated by white heterosexual men. See, this is all starting to sound familiar now, right? As a result, one of the most common themes addresses within postmodernism relates to cultural identity. There is very large numbers of potential interpretations of the world. So it's about how you're seeing the world and how it works or it functions, right? How does the world function? That's connected to culture, right? And through that, government is raised up based off of the culture. So all these things are connected. So they try to deconstruct it and figure out how it works. This is the critical theory part of it, right? And then that's where, like, again, critical race theory is kind of the same thing. They say it's not, but it's they're looking at something through a lens critically. It started with law. So we're going to start, we can get into that if you want.
Yeah.
So it's critical blank theory. So it's critical race theory right now.
Yeah,
it's critical
theory.
Yeah,
but
is the root of it.
But a lot of these things came from, they don't want to say it, but they say it's just like a response to the civil rights movement because things weren't happening. And I'll let them talk, let them say it, because these are some of the people who started the critical race theory stuff. So,
all right. Well, before we do that, speaking of critical race theory, just recently, over the weekend, they had this topic on Bill Maher with Ben Shapiro and Malcolm Nance, and they kind of debated back and forth on this. So I want to kind of like let them speak on it a little bit. We'll try to chop it up so we don't get hit by the copyright, so people can see what
we have to talk over.
We'll talk over it. So we can see what people now are saying. This was a debate that just happened. So and then we can get into those videos that Jake said.
But you and 6 other people.
Right. So,
but what matters is what is it practically? It's being taught in schools or some form
I like
of.
Ben Shapiro.
yes, there's a certain sort of crystallized version of it that is a lot less complex than what critical race theory actually is. But critical race theory essentially argues that racism is baked into all the systems of American society, and that any sort of neutral system is in fact a guise for racial power. And so the argument is made by Derek Bell, for example, that Brown versus Board of Education, this is an argument he made in 1991, that Brown versus Board of Education was actually a way for the white community to leverage its own power. It wasn't an attempt to end segregation in public schools. Even things that are purportedly good in terms of race, so long as they uphold these broader systems, things like capitalism or things like the meritocracy, these things are actually just guises for power. And so what that boils down to in sort of practical terms is all disparity equals discrimination. If you can see any stat where black people are underperforming white people, this means the system was set up for the benefit of white people, and that white people have a duty to tear down these systems in order to alleviate the racism that's implicit in those systems. When it comes to schools, what this tends to boil down to is kids who are white have experienced privilege because the system was built for white people, and we have to change the standards.
Right. Now, okay, well, so Malcolm, you tell me your definition.
Oh, I agree with everything he just said.
Oh, great.
How often do we have to talk over the video?
I don't know. Yeah.
That's why I was doing
honest
it.
in defining of what it's like to be black American.
Yeah.
Right?
But see, they're both seeing,
we're
like, he's
talking about
defining
a
it.
system.
He's when he's talking about it, he's saying that this is the way they see everything, right? And he's saying, yeah, I agree with you. Like, because like you said, it's through the lens of everything, like even Brown v. Board of Education, it was done to keep black people in bondage. That's what they're saying here.
Right.
Oh, no, I'm just saying I agree with all of those suppositions because they are grounded in truth. Look, and the funny thing is, it's not just African Americans, right? It's also the Scalp Act of 1749, where for $300 modern dollars, you had to cut off the head or the hair of an Indian to prove that you've got them out of the way so they could settle.
Okay.
That's a little bit of American history that people should know about. The Chinese Exclusion Acts of the 1840s. These are things we don't talk about.
But the thing about it, and this is the argument that a lot of people push back against, is that people do talk about it. We learn about these things in school all the time. You know, it's not like these are being kept out of schools. You know,
It's not true.
You
that
just
people
don't want to
talk
go
about
into
these
the
things. We
detail
all
of
do
it
our
in
jobs.
school.
you don't do it in a way where it's like, yeah, this is why the country's bad.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things that why you need to see every system needs to be torn down. This is why we need socialism. This is why we need Marxism. You know what I mean? Like that's what's not supposed to be.
Talked about?
No, that's not true either.
You want
That's
to
not-
cancel
No,
them?
Malcolm, I'm sorry, you're lying.
that's not
lying.
true.
That's
That's
just
not lying.
it is lying. I not
it's
only
not
have
tr-
I've personally
I
talked
agree.
about many of the things that you just mentioned. I define critical race theory by citing the actual authors of critical race theory, and you seem to be a pretty good beneficiary of the meritocracy because you have merit, Malcolm. So if you're going to criticize the meritocracy as an outgrowth of white supremacy, then you're going to have to tear down the system that you've succeeded in because you have merit, or do not have merit.
You know, when my great-great-grandfather ran away from slavery to join the 111th U.S. Colored Troops and fight against the South, keeping human beings as slaves, he didn't think, you know what? In 150 years, my great-great-grandson's going to have to sit on stage and argue with a guy who thinks all that's bullshit. All right? I'm just saying,
Malcolm,
there is no controversy.
Well, first of all,
The controversy that's made up is people saying that this is being discussed, this is being taught in schools, and that kids should be kept away from it.
That's not true.
It's not even a real controversy.
Malcolm, the fifth largest school district in America, Clark County, just decided that they were going to lower standards with regard to testing because they wanted to alleviate disparities in outcomes. That is an outgrowth of critical race theory.
Can you draw a straight line to it?
Yes.
Really?
100%. Because when you say that the meritocracy is an outgrowth of white supremacy, and then you suggest
He
that I'm
wasn't
somehow
ready.
denying that slavery took place or that
No,
your
I didn't say
great-great-great-grandfather was a hero because I'm saying that I want people tested when they are in school to see if they are good at school, then what you're purporting to push now is just nonsense. I'm sorry, it's just sheer bullshit, Malcolm. It's just bullshit.
No, it's not, but I think it's also a leap to say that he thought that was bullshit because that's not what it is. I mean, are we talking about 2021? Or are we talking about 1861?
Right.
Because
The point is, can we talk
You're using
about
today's
1861 and
eyes.
2021?
yes, we can. And
You just did.
I don't know. I don't know who is. I don't know.
And the other thing about it is like you point to other countries, like show me where like the progression has been so much better for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Show me where this
where
country has
Marxism
failed so
worked.
much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In comparison to other countries.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You
There's
know?
been no nation that's accumulated so much power.
But like Jake is
abused
saying,
less.
when you see everything through a critical lens, it's easy to just focus on all of the negatives and say, this is why it's bad.
And that's the postmodernism training and
Yeah.
thought. And postmodernism, there is no gratitude in postmodernism. There is no thankfulness.
There's
Right?
no honor.
There's no honor. There's
Yeah.
no honor whatsoever. It's about resentment. Like literally, it's all about resentment, and that's why it's very, it's a parasite. It's a parasite,
Wow.
and it gets in and infects. Just like you can look at it like. Just like religion is a parasite, like it's a religion, you know, just like a religion in terms of religion pushing itself on you for an outcome is warfare, right? That's a parasite that's trying to get in your body, right?
Yeah.
It's trying to attack you and kill you from the outside and come in,
Right.
to corrupt your body. So these things, this is. And you look at it in biblical terms, like if you use something that was given for your behalf and you use it against other people, then you misuse it.
Right.
And this is what they're doing
You
with
abuse
what's
it.
going on. Like this country was,
You're abusing America.
there's so many benefits that are here, but you're taking it and you're dishonoring it for your own gain. That's why they got to tear it all down.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this is the issue with a lot of this stuff.
And it's what's the solution? You tear it down and you build what?
Right.
Anywhere
Exactly.
Marxism existed, it's failed.
Yeah.
And there is
not only failed, it's led to the death of millions of
people in the process.
I just want to say this. They don't believe in the individual. They believe in the group.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe in logic. Right? They don't believe in logic. Literally. Because they believe in their own truth. Right? The way they see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's connected to relativism. Right? They believe in the way they view it is their own logic. So logic is forever moving and turning into whatever makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's kind of like, this protest, this group of people doesn't spread COVID, but this group of people does.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's interesting that, and you're seeing all
that
this.
logic doesn't exist. It's not congruent.
But when you
mean?
want it to, it can.
Yeah.
Right. When you want to see something, you can. And we do this in culture.
Mm-hmm.
We do this in our cultures, and that's why we have bias in our cultures.
Yeah.
Right. It's really not about racism. It's about prejudice. It's about our prejudices.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We all have prejudice that we don't even see it.
Yeah.
But that's why the beautiful thing about God is he teaches us mercy instead of judgment. Because prejudice is about judgment or prejudging before we actually know what's going on. Right? It's ignorant to prejudge. Literally, it's ignorant. You don't have all the facts. You don't have all the truth. So when you can stay in your pride in saying it's okay not to have the truth, you're just as prejudiced as somebody else who you say is racist, right?
It's the same type of
it's the
prejudice.
same thing.
Yeah.
And you continually morph the truth. Logic comes from logos. You know what I mean? So logos, you know what logos is the word of God, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at the Bible, the word has to have meaning, right? Anytime we deny the meaning for our own meaning, right? If we go through something in our life and we don't understand it, if we apply our own meaning to it using the Bible or other tactics, we've just lied to ourselves. The meaning has to be from where it came. That's why Jesus came to bring us meaning, right? He came to bring the word, to be the word, right? And what he did was he suffered to show us meaning, right? He suffered to show us that he had to trust in his Father in heaven through his suffering and lay down his life, meaning his own way of thinking, his own, not my will, like that's what he said when he's like, take this cup from me if there's any other way, but not my will, your will.
Yeah.
If this man, it truly came to this world and did no wrong, but yet died for everybody that did wrong, then what are we talking about when we're talking about what's fair and equal?
Right.
Because that's not fair and equal.
Right. We want to talk about equity.
Right. That's not fair and equal.
Yeah.
And a greater love dies and allows people to deal with you in that way. So, and the reason why I'm talking about this in that way is because this is getting into the church,
Yeah.
It's creeping into the church.
All right, so let me get into the videos that you had given me.
I was going to say, equity says we all need to be on that cross.
That's right.
If we all end up
That's
in the
true.
same place.
Right.
Everybody needs to end up on
it.
That's fair.
Let's start with the Marxism. That's their favorite one. They're using that every single time. And I hate to ask you.
So,
I hate to ask dumb
real quick,
questions. So please don't.
This is I forget.
Joy Reid.
We know it's Joy Reid.
But I can't remember her name right now. She's one of the first people to really get into the critical race theory. She wrote a book about it.
Ibram X. Kendi.
No. That's he takes it to another level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can't think of her name. Something Brown, I think. But anyway, she takes it to another level. She was under Bell. Bell was kind of the guy who started it.
Okay.
So she takes it to another level. She wrote about critical race theory. So she's going to explain what it is and try to debunk what they're talking about.
This is going to be a whole bunch of propaganda right here. I can already.
In a way, it's not all false. It's not false in what she's saying. But if there's an underlying thing here that you got to be able to see.
Who is it? Kimberly Crenshaw, Jake?
Yes, that's it. Kimberly Crenshaw.
No mic today. We didn't have time to set it up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Dumb. Is critical race theory Marxism?
Look, you know what? Here's the thing, Joy.
She didn't say
yes
no.
or no. Yes or no. Can we just stop
Yo,
her there?
I love when they do that. Here's the thing. Here's
got
the
the
thing.
Kamala.
Yeah, right. Here's the thing. But is she going to say no?
Critical race theory is not so much a thing. It's a way of looking at a thing. It's a way of looking at race. It's a way of looking at why, after so many decades, centuries actually, since the emancipation, we have patterns of inequality that are enduring. They are stubborn. And the point of critical race theory originally was to think and talk about how law contributed to the subordinate status of African Americans, of indigenous people, and of an entire group of people who were coming to our shores.
I just want to say that, like, every time I see these things, I see people that are so excited for the fact that the idea of race is being talked about in the forefront, that they don't care if it's being used for whatever agenda. They're just happy that it's the topic of conversation. We get the spotlight. People want to know about racism. Finally, you know what I mean? And so they're so excited.
I get to be heard.
Right.
And
I get to let people know why we're victims.
Right.
Like why?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a lot of this stuff, like when you look at the founders of BLM, all that stuff, like they're admitted Marxists, but the fact that that movement had some validity to it, people didn't care. You know what I mean? The one girl bought all them houses and she got out of there. The other one's married to a white transgender woman. You know what I mean? It's like,
wow.
Like, you know, it's just
right.
It's all over the place. But,
That's
huh?
Is that the distraction for the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that just got passed because everybody's focusing on something else?
Probably. You know,
from Asia. And the point was, quite frankly, to understand the problem in order to intervene in it, to understand why the greatest hopes for our republic were not being realized, even though these hopes were encoded in law. So critical race theory just inherits the beliefs and the hopes of Frederick Douglass, of Martin Luther King, who basically want the law to do for the freed people what the law did for enslavers. And we picked that up in the 70s and 80s after the civil rights movement to say, okay, so now we've had this big civil rights movement. We have all these laws in the books, but things really aren't looking as different as they should if we are really the society that we say we are. So we put about the task of understanding how law wasn't just the neutral referee. Law wasn't always on our side. In fact, law was less on our side than on our side. And we wanted to tell these stories in order to do better with the promises that are embedded in the Constitution. That's what's in critical race theory.
So,
okay, let's explain what she is.
It's not a lie.
Because it is true.
It's true.
A lot of
I'm
what she's saying.
But
the Dr. King part, it flies in the critical race theory flies in the face of what Dr. King stood for. Directly.
Yeah. I mean, he was kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah. I think because Dr. King was kind of into socialism.
Yeah,
you know what I
in
mean?
a way.
Yeah.
In a way.
But he did say, and this is probably one of the biggest things, like the content of your character.
Yeah.
Not the color of your skin. That's and we got to hold that to him.
Right.
Because then you're not looking through the lens of color. And this, like the next one, she literally says,
you have to see people things through the lens of color. Yeah.
Yes, because people are talking about blind, like I don't see color,
right?
Or blind,
and they're saying that is not, that's racist to say I don't see color.
Right.
You have to see things through the lens of color.
Right.
Which you don't if you're
God's
child.
Yeah.
Which
we shouldn't.
It's dependent upon what you're talking about.
Right.
It's not, you can't just wipe a whole thing over that. Like, yeah, color does matter in certain aspects because it's unique to you.
Do you think a lot of this is also like pushback because there has been a lot of people throughout the decades, you know, a lot of, especially on the conservative side, that will just completely ignore the effects of racism, or it completely act like it never existed, or act like that it wasn't as bad. You know what I mean? Like the fact that black people were targeted by police for decades. Black people did have laws that, you know, kept them out of certain neighborhoods, kept them, you know, this is facts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
COVID passports. I can bring it up to right now.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, do you think that some of this is the effects of years and years of people trying to convince people of this, and now they have now that people are finally grabbing it, they're like, yeah, we need to talk about this more.
Yeah, but you can't. This is the issue I have with critical race theory, is that how you gonna talk about being free when you're bound?
Right.
Right? Meaning, like, if you're in bondage and you're seeing from the viewpoint of bondage, you don't know what freedom looks like.
Right.
So you're trying to impose an idea that you really don't understand. Right? You have to break out of that bondage. And America has something amazing in it because it's about freedom, right? It's a mandate, like she said it in the Constitution. But that's not. But the difference between her and like somebody like me, is that I get my understanding of what that looks like by the one who is free,
right?
By the one who came, like, so, and the idea of freedom, the idea of the mandate of this country was put in place through God.
Right.
Right. It was the ideas that came by the Bible and came by, you could say, the first Great Awakening, you know?
So what do you think the idea of freedom is that they are looking for? Like these people that are proponents of CRT and like that are pushing this, like what is their end goal for freedom for black people?
The way it looks like to them.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, what do you think it looks like to them?
The way it looks to them. Like, it's all different.
But I think that's kind of what Ben was talking about. Like, is it, if you see any area where black people are not performing the way other groups are, then that's like, now that's a problem. Like, is that so? Until it's all
responsibility. We got to take responsibility for ourselves.
Right.
That's the point of this country. It's to give
the individual responsibility.
But see, that's what freedom really looks like.
Right.
And you gotta, in order to do that, you gotta honor those who have it. Like, it's about a greater love. Like Jesus said, there's no greater love you laid down your life for your friend. Right. We talked about this before. You can't. If you're a child, you don't know how to keep yourself. Your parents keep you. Right? That's a greater love.
Yeah.
And you have to, and in order to come into that, you have to trust them to grow into what they have. Right? The story about America is that, and this is what I'm saying, like with America, is that when you look at America, it's about losing and gaining freedom, right? It's about when they do the things that they shouldn't be doing, they're losing it, right? And so, yeah, these laws that they put in place and all these things that they did, you see the progression into that other state, right? Because it's impartiality, right? It's bias. But what saved America a lot of times, and this is the history that people don't look at, like the connection to like these awakenings that happened. You had the first Great Awakening, you had the second Great Awakening. All these things caused people to think in a different way. It changed cultures, right? It started the Revolutionary War. It had to do with the Civil War.
Civil War, right.
It changed cultures and the way we viewed life and the laws. and it was a pushback. But this started from these like revivals, you know. And what happens in revivals is that you start to see who God really is, because it's a spiritual thing and it's the spirit of truth. So things shift. But that's not talked about. Like, and that's what I'm like. They talking about the stuff that you're only looking at the wrongs. But what about the good? There's hope in God in any situation, you know. But when we have no hope, we're depressed. When we got no hope, we want to blame somebody.
We look at it through race.
If we have no hope,
yeah.
Like, what is the point of slavery? Like, it was to put you in a state where you had no hope and you submitted. You know what I mean? You have no hope, so you submit. That comes from the devil, and that's what it talks about all up in the Bible, right? So,
but don't we see them tactics still being put in place now? Like, where it's like, well, you can't do this if you don't get vaxxed. You can't do that. So you have to do what we say. You know what I mean?
Trust the experts.
Yeah.
And you allow these people to come into power because, see, and that's what you're seeing. Like, these people are coming to power. They don't care about you. They're pushing an agenda, right? They're pushing something. They don't really care about you. They care about themselves.
Right.
People are so passionate about these things because they really care about their own outcome, right? And I say this all. It's like a kid who is looking at somebody doing wrong, and they like, you're going to get yours. Or, you know, they're telling on them because they want them to get a beating.
They get in trouble.
They want them to get in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, they want to see them punished. You know, you were showing us the thing with Mark, what's his name?
Oh, Mark Dice.
Mark Dice, where these people were signing a petition to get people put in jail for
just speaking about
how they thought,
just being
for
against
being a Trump supporter.
Yeah, right.
Like, they wanted to put him in jail.
Yeah. I'm all for that. What?
Yeah.
So you get these people like, that's what it looks like to be irresponsible, right? A kid. That's why a kid isn't in the place to judge over their brother,
right,
or their sister, right? Because they don't have the ability, because they're going to be biased.
But they don't understand that that's just another form of slavery. Like, you're not free,
right? And you don't have the right to be free,
right?
Because that right is given by God, and you have to receive it. It comes from God. Like, you have to receive that. So it's like kids. In the Bible, it says that a son is like a servant or a slave. A son is like a servant or a slave because he's just like him, because he's got to do the same things, right? But a son, Jesus said that a slave doesn't dwell in the house forever, but a son does. That's the difference. A son is coming into something, right, greater. A slave isn't. A slave only got what they got at that moment, but a son, even though he's in the same place as a slave, he won't be forever, right? Because he's learning servitude, and what servitude is dying to my own ways. But when you want to lift up your own way, then you're always going to be a slave in reality. Because how can God trust you with the ability to judge? You're not going to judge right. You're going to judge impartially. Right? You're gonna judge against people. You're gonna have, like we were talking about this earlier, you're gonna favor one group of people, and then you're gonna be impartial to another. And that's why you see genocide. That's why you see with the socialism and a lot of this stuff, or even like tribalism, where it gets so bad that you see major genocide, because it's about the group that wins. Right? But true rulership is dying to every group, right? And because love is the thing that has to truly bring justice, right? There's no greater love that you lay your life down. Are you willing to lay your life down for somebody that you don't like because they did something to you? Most people aren't.
Right.
You know, and that's why you can't view the lens of race. I mean, you can't view the world through the lens of race.
Yeah, for sure.
So that other video is kind of like, it's basically saying the same thing. So you can skip that if you want, and we can go to the next stuff.
So let me read it. We had a bunch of comments.
No, it got good up in there.
Stephanie said he took our place for sure. Every single one of us should have been up there. That's the wage, right? We paid the entire wage.
Talking about
Simone said she ain't say no. That was referring to the lady when she asked, "Is it Marx?" She definitely did not say no. Not maybe yes or no. Love that presence everywhere. LOL. Simone said they are all successful in a systemic racist country. Defund the police, but spend $200K of taxpayer money on private security.
Somebody better say that again.
He's talking about what's her name? Bush, Cori Bush. Yeah, yeah, and then said, "Suck it up." If I want to spend, she was about to say if I want to spend $10 million, but she stopped herself because I need to be here, and we need to defund the police. Content of your character, not the color of your skin. Simone Chang. I don't disagree with her, but what I don't like is, I don't know what Stephanie. Oh, Stephanie was going in on the comments. All right, so So what was the next video then? You want me to skip this one and go to the next one?
Yeah, you can skip it.
Okay.
She's basically saying the same thing.
How you think this way
basically
of
saying the same thing?
Yeah.
looking at racism, understanding.
All right, so
has
This is a long video.
Yeah, this is a guy who's going through. Guy's actually from Philly.
Okay.
This guy's from England. Obviously, he's got an English accent.
Okay, I was about to say.
This is all Christians, and they're talking about critical race theory. So the black guy, I forget his name, but he's talking about like why he can take some of the things in, not all of it, and this is what a lot of Christians are doing. They're taking these things that make sense to them, and I get it in a way, but it's like you really don't need to, you know. And that's the thing. Like they're feeling like they have to because it can become a solution when it's like no, because it's gonna skew your view anyway,
right?
And that's what's happening. So,
and we all know what the solution is.
Informed the protests and the conversations that have been going on in the last, 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, and that question actually leads to kind of my primary concern or critique of the whole conversation as a whole. So just a little bit of background. I'm born and raised in inner city Philadelphia, went to University of Pennsylvania, majored in Africana studies and sociology. And so I was all up in the social sciences as a discipline, as a perspective, became a Christian as a freshman, was very much formed by evangelicalism as I was developing in my own faith. And but throughout that process, both from an academic training standpoint, even though that was my degree, like this never was a thing that came up I'd never heard about it. Like, in fact, I didn't start hearing about it like a lot of Black Christians until as we were talking about issues of injustice, people were putting that label upon me. So I started to look at like, well, what are they talking about? I don't even understand what you're accusing me of. And then I go back and I go, okay, so there's a few problems with that. The first is that really the big question is the fact that many people, and I would say, from what I've read from Neil, have an uncritical race theory. What I mean by that is they have no theory on race. Like they just assume that it's a category that's just as neutral as gender or class. Whereas if you learn and go back to the history of race, going back to the 15th century, the Native American Christian author Mark Charles has done a lot of reading on the doctrine of discovery and how essentially the idea of race was codified through a series of papal bulls that were used to justify how it could be that Europeans could take over and discover, using scare quotes, lands that were already inhabited. And the essential explanation was that because they weren't human. It was a theory of humanity that said okay, these people are not as fully human beings. The image of God is not as fully revealed in who they are than it is in who we are as Europeans. And so as a result of that, we get to conquest, rape, pillage, confiscate lands for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of Christ. That was part of so it was theology, it was anthropology,
notifications
a way of looking
going
at people. And all of those things become codified in law, both in Europe and in the United States. So whether it's the Declaration of Independence, where you see we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and then you go a few lines later and it says, it complains that King George doesn't allow them to take over the merciless Indian savages, or if it's the Constitution, which calls enslaved people, black people, 3/5 of a person. This was a system, a way of looking at humanity that is now trying to be critiqued. And that is part of the thing that I don't see. And so when you talk about what's happening on the streets, one of the things that Brian Stevenson talks about, the author of Just Mercy, which just came out as a movie, is that while the North may have won the tactical war, that the South won the narrative war. That there was a war about the nature of who are human beings and who gets to participate in our society fully. And so that's where you get Jim Crow segregation. That's where you get all the things that happened in the 100 years that followed the end of the Civil War from 1865 to 1965. You have this, attempt to maintain a racial caste system that was in place because the very nature and notion of race was very much the foundation upon which these unjust systems emerge. And so I feel like if you don't have that understood, if that's not a full theory that you can actually understand and break down, then critical race theory begins to be even more confusing, because now you don't have a holistic way of actually seeing what it is, the fact of what they're trying to critique in the first place. So lastly, when I look at these movements of protest, very much they're related to the same struggle, because these in the same way that Brian Stevenson talked about, once the Civil War ended, there was still 100 years of racial disparities that was codified de facto into law. Well, now we have de jure, where it's not necessarily legally explicit, but the vestiges of those systems still remain, and the ideas and the narratives of those systems still remain.
So if they...
All right, so what he's saying is all true.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What he's breaking down there, the way it was all designed, the way the way they dehumanize people, and the way the church played a part in that is all true.
Mm-hmm.
Even as recent as the 1950s, 1960s, some of these mega church pastors were preaching doctrine about Ham being the line of Africans. You know what I mean? And this is why that interracial dating is not good. This is something that has existed in the church, up until even recently. You know what I mean? So I understand why he's saying what he's saying, and that there's people, like I said, there's people that will even go as far to deny the fact that exists.
Right.
You know what I mean? So then you have the emergence of people that need to theorize and critique all this stuff because they feel like they have to go above and beyond to show how it still exists. But when you do that, it then becomes, like you said, it becomes another prejudice that you just now push to the forefront that you're creating another monster with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
because you can't fight fire with fire. That's what you start to see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's again, if you keep looking at stuff through the lens of slavery, because that's what it is.
Right.
It's a bondage mentality. Just because you see all these things in the viewpoint of bondage, you have to see above it.
Right.
It's obvious these things are happening. That's obvious. But what's the solution?
Right.
And you can't. Their solution is not in the place of viewing these things because that's in a place of bondage.
But like you said, it's the idea of, but I need to make you see it though.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I need you to see it.
Right.
Because I won't feel good until you see it.
I need you to understand how I feel.
Right. But not knowing that that's not where the freedom is. The freedom is in, I don't need you to see it.
Because,
you know what I mean?
Okay, even if I do see it, what comes after?
Right.
Okay, fine.
Right.
I understand where you're coming from.
Right. Then
Now
what?
what?
Yeah.
Where do we go for the now what?
Well, now I need you to do something. Like, now I need you to give me some shit. Give me something.
some money.
Right. Give me something.
Well, that's what happens a little further. They kind of explain that, but yeah, let's just keep going with this.
Okay. Let me just check comments real quick while we here. See if anybody was saying anything. Stephanie said, and you can't view through the lens of Jesus. If the country keeps going the way it has, we are all going to be slaves by definition. Oh, man. All right. Let's keep playing.
CRT, critical race theory, is essentially unpacking and understanding that those disparities that have emerged through centuries of the way that race has been thought of and categorized and put into law and so on. In that sense, Rasul says it's potentially a helpful way of understanding, and it doesn't replace our Christian understanding necessarily, but it can inform it. It can help us to, do justice and love mercy and treat each other all as made in the image of God and so on. So
love
there we
mercy.
go.
That's
yeah.
That's from the, what is it, Micah?
Yeah.
That's the song that we did last week. Right.
Do justice, love mercy. And what do we say? You got to do that from the backwards.
Right. Walk humbly.
Act justice, right?
No, it's first is walk humbly.
Well, no. Yeah.
I'm saying if you do it from the opposite way,
right.
Walk in humbleness so that you can love mercifully and then act justly.
Right.
Right.
And the reason why it's saying act justly first is because that's what you see.
Right.
That's what you see.
Right.
Like people see. That's
Right.
what you're carrying now
Right.
as a structure,
Right.
as a character.
Mhm.
Right. But the other stuff was done.
That was already
with you and
done.
God.
Right.
So what are your key criticisms of this theory? And I'm sure then we'll have to go to a quick break and we'll hear Russell's responses.
Well, maybe we'll do that after the break. But I want to just say that actually one of the things I appreciated about Pastor Rasul's essay
This is another Ben Shapiro? What's going on here?
is that he says
he
as a
sounds
result
like
of
Ben, but he looks like from The Office, the boss of Michael Scott.
I
forget his name, David. Doesn't
Who?
look like him.
You talking about the boss of? Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, what's his name?
David Wallace.
David Wallace. Yes, he does kind of look like
learn from philosophers.
Jake got
scholars,
another
and
notification.
activists, regardless of their
I hope you
personal
don't.
beliefs, and that we don't have to wholeheartedly embrace CRT or reject all it has to say about race and justice. He said that, and I actually agree. And one of the things I think that CRT gets right is how the concept of race and white and black races actually was a social construct that did create an effective racial casteism. I'm going to read, Rasul, I know that I write a lot, but you said I didn't really have a theory of race. Well, actually, I'm going to read from a quote from an essay that Pat and I wrote on Ekemini Yuan's Sparrow Talk a year ago. But we wrote, the idea and concept of race is a modern development that came to prominence in the 17th century. We said it was a purposeful attempt to justify slavery and to concentrate power within the hands of people of European origin. The U.S. did indeed develop a kind of racial caste system which placed whites at the top and blacks at the bottom. So I understand that. I think this is one of the areas that critical race theory does get right, and we can say, look at history and say, yeah, actually, they're right. When I read quite a bit of critical race theory. When I read their views on the construction of race in the U.S., I generally think they get it right. So my concerns are not the things they get right. My concerns are, number one, the things they get wrong, and more than that, the fact that their foundations, their core tenets on which they build these theories are deeply wrong and poisonous. And I guess we'll do that after the break.
Well, look, we've got a couple of minutes. We've got a few minutes. So why don't you give us maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 if we can squeeze them in, and then we'll go to Rasul after
Let me
the break.
just give you one. So critical race theory, like I said, I can quote many critical race theorists saying this is a core tenet of the...
Was this on YouTube?
Yeah.
I was going to say, do we need to talk over it?
I don't know. I just always I come across a lot of like these shows on YouTube or like podcasts where they're like, we have a break, and I never understand. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, how do you have a break?
I think
there is no break.
I think because it's radio. Like there's a lot of podcasts
that are like Blog Talk Radio
Yeah, right,
also.
right.
But even there, it's like you control all of that.
Where it
So
is,
it's
where it
like,
breaks in.
but I don't know. It's just one of those things that I always think about. Like, how is there a break? There's no break.
You're free.
Like, stop trying to be like you're like
theory. But they connect racism, sexism, classism, and heterosexism as all linked forms of oppression. The term they use is interlocking systems of oppression. That's an extremely central idea. And actually, you can see in Pastor Rasul's essay, he picks up on that. He says, why is it so hard for some Christians to see the value of CRT's critique of racism? Because they're mapping out race. And he says, when people map out by power, by pointing out racial or gender privilege, it can cause our defenses to go up. I'm quoting him again. He says, I know that defensive reflex firsthand because when my male privilege needed to be called out, he gets defensive. So in other words, Pastor Russell sees that, there's white privilege and there's male privilege, but critical race theorists would say yes, and there's class privilege and heterosexual privilege. They're all interlocking. So, for example, in his essay, Critical Race Theory, Archie Chapman, Fiery Music, John Calmore writes, adherents of critical race theory see an interlocking set of oppressions that extend beyond the singular base of race and include the bases of gender, economic class, and sexual orientation. Ibram Kendi, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, says, to be an anti-racist is to be a feminist. To be truly a feminist is to be anti-racist. We cannot be anti-racist if we are homophobic or transphobic. Wildman and Davis write, white privilege derives from a system of white supremacy, male privilege, and heterosexual privilege result from the gender hierarchy. So again, these are critical race theorists who are saying it's all connected. You can't just pick apart race. You have to see race, class, gender, sexuality, physical ability, age, immigration status as interlocking forms of oppression. And right off the bat, Christians are going to say, wait a minute, I don't believe that the gender binary is oppressive. I don't believe that gender roles are oppressive. But critical race theory is built on, especially since intersectionality in 1989, 91 with Kimberly Crenshaw, it's built on the recognition
Kimberly
that these
Crenshaw
things
is from
are
the other
indeed
video.
related forms of oppression.
Thanks, Rach.
So that there's one huge area where we have to say that fundamental idea that's, again, in the core tenets of critical race theory must be rejected by Christians.
Rasul.
Okay, so this is why when we see in on the BLM website their charter, we see to destroy the nuclear family. We see all these things about trans rights, about LGBTQ rights, because it's all in the scope of CRT. It's all interconnected.
Yeah, and that's why, like, he's saying that the other guy although he's saying all these things, and he's like, yeah, I agree in that, but I disagree with you on this, because he's talking about, like, his male privilege.
Right.
It's like, bro, what?
Yeah.
Like, you can't see, but you kind of got to lend yourself to those ideas now because of the lens.
Right. The lens doesn't allow you to cut off those ideas.
No.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Like, I can see these disparities and these things going on, and that there was this system that was culturally put in place, but at the same time, that has to be reconciled through God. You know what I'm saying? Like, if because we talking about Christians here,
right?
You know what I mean? We're talking about, like, that can't be reconciled through my own thinking, because my mind can't process that. Right?
I'm going to judge it wrongly.
I'm going to judge it wrongly.
Right.
So that's where, we receive the love of Christ, right? But we have to have the mind of Christ. And the mind of Christ is, now we have the ability to do the thing that we couldn't do before, right? And that's the solution.
Right.
And that comes from Jesus.
James said, what's the name of the podcast these guys were speaking on? Shout out to James. What's up, James?
What up, James?
I can't remember.
You should be here.
Right. Yeah, James is working, boy. That brother's working.
It's good to be busy, man.
Stephanie said, this is a headache. Just give me the Bible.
You got to deal with these things, though.
It is, but yeah, we have to deal with these things because
They're
a lot of people are See how slight it is. It's slight.
Because it's connected to a lot of truth, and it's connected to a lot of pain and
Yes.
a lot of past trauma.
Yes.
So that's what allows it. That's what gives it that opening,
Right.
That
It's like-
small crack in the phalanx, like we were talking about earlier. Like you know, when you watch 300, when the dude, the deformed dude is like, I really want to be a soldier, and he's like, well, let me see you lift up your shield,
see your
right?
form.
Right.
And he's like, see, you don't understand how our phalanx works. If there's one crack in it, it destroys the
fails.
whole thing. And you know, I think with this, it's like those are the cracks that it finds its way to infiltrate, so those darts can hit, you know, and the enemy can get in. And this is what's happening in the church now.
What did the serpent say to
You're not gonna. You won't surely die.
Yeah.
Will you?
Will you? No, that's what he said. He said, "Will you though?" But really though,
I don't think you will surely die.
Right.
You ain't gonna drop dead right here. Come on.
Right.
Let's do this.
Right, because he's saying like you won't drop dead now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He didn't even go that far.
Right.
It's like you won't die.
Right.
Yeah.
And then see, I told you.
Yeah. See, look, you still alive. Yeah. What up, Emma? Emma said, "Hello, people. How y'all doing?"
What's up,
Great.
bro?
We're doing good, brother. Good to see you. Hey, make sure you guys share the video, please. Shout out. We going deep on this CRT stuff. It's very, very serious. All right, next video. Any setup for this?
I don't even remember
what it is. All right, let's just play it.
Is the Bible commentary written by a white Anglo-Saxon Eurocentric person inevitably colored by that person's experience, and that you don't get the full truth from that unless you also are putting it next to people's other experiences and the way they interpret the gospel?
Man, there's so much. I'm just going to try my best. There was so much there to respond to.
Don't we know this dude?
It reminds me.
I mean, he's from Philly. He's from Philly.
Like we know this guy.
This is
man.
Rachel's people's right here.
I feel like we know him.
He looks very
from
familiar.
somewhere.
He looks familiar. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure we probably crossed paths at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reformed Theological Seminary right now, and shout out to Jay Harvey, the executive director. He gave me this as a food for thought on this. The church is being brought ethical concerns and is responding with epistemological critique. That's like a man telling you he's bleeding, and you ask him, "How did you come to that conclusion?" That's part of what's happening here. That's hard to wrap your head around. It's similar to, I feel like, Job's friends of just kind of pummeling someone with a bunch of, rejoinders when you're like, yo, I'm suffering. But to answer that epistemological thing, because I did see Neil.
Oh, what was he getting at with that?
He's
because we were talking about Job just recently and how his friends tried to tell him like, well, maybe there's something you did wrong.
Yeah. And exactly. And he's like, yo, I'm suffering. And it's like, that's not the way it was viewed. Like, he's trying to say like, we're suffering like through what we're going through as black, brown people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the point. It's not the point.
So, and saying like, but people are saying, but maybe it's something you did wrong. Like he's trying to equate it in that way.
No, I don't think so. I think he's just saying like there he's throwing all these things at him, like, but he's like, yo, I'm suffering. Like, look at my suffering.
Right.
When that's not what it's about. You know what I mean? That's
not what Job is about.
No.
Yeah.
Job is about them prejudging.
Right.
And yes, people can say things like, oh, you get over it. You know what I mean? People can be insensitive, and not want to see your view, which I get. But like, to me, it's just like he's taken away from the core understanding of what Job is just by saying that, because it's like, bro, that's not what it's about.
Right. He's connecting to it. He's finding his own way to connect.
Right.
His idea emotionally to Job.
Right. Because really, what it's about is, God, why am I suffering? Why am I suffering?
Right.
Not, guys, look at my suffering and care for my suffering.
It was also that Job didn't fall into his suffering at the hands of other people who were just being devious,
right?
Or who didn't want to see see him as human. Like
and Job was blameless.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
in the
nothing
matter.
he did. It was nothing. No fault of his. No fault of anyone else's. It was
Right.
just a test.
Right.
It's like the chess masters.
Right.
What about your most loyal, your most whatever?
Yeah, right.
Let me test it.
Let me test that
Let me
one.
test it.
Yeah. And
And see if he can-
was like, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Because I already know.
I already know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the key was the key was about fearing him.
Right.
Like what God, he only fears or honors God because of what he's getting from God.
Because he's blessed.
Right.
Right.
And that's kind of the whole background to it all.
Mhm.
Because it's really about like the riches and how we equated things. That's why like when Jesus said to the apostles, the disciples, who would be apostles, he said how hard it is for a rich man to enter into heaven. And they're
Right.
like, what how can anybody enter in? Like, how can anybody enter in then? Because why did they say it like that? Why were they so? Because if you do the commandments, God says he's going to bless you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the key. Like, that's how they view the scriptures, right? And Jesus is saying that's not it.
Right.
He's saying there's more to it because the enemy can get all up in that and
Yeah.
twist it. So I think that's the key. And that's what we need to look at is, like we just said, the serpent is the one who's trying to twist these things, and trying to get us off and looking like we're justified. We're good. We're and the same thing with Job. Like he had to trust in God, and it was about learning that trust. Same thing with Jesus. What did Jesus do? Jesus said, not my will, your will. He was trusting in God. He was learning obedience through his suffering.
Brings you back to the Father.
Yep.
No matter what I go through.
All right. Stephanie said, Job suffered so much they should have been praying alongside, having the same patience of Job.
Right.
All right, let's continue here.
You wrote that to critical theorists, these totalitizing, comprehensive, exclusive claims are utterly unacceptable from the perspective of contemporary critical theory. God is the ultimate oppressor, and you refer to lived experience as a problem with that, or and I think that from an apologist standpoint, we know that there are different forms of knowledge. There's propositional knowledge, this, if this, then that. There's procedural knowledge, such as learning how to ride a bike. There's direct awareness, knowledge by acquaintance. I know how it feels to stub my toe. So when you say, yo, I stubbed my toe and it hurt, I can be like, yeah, I understand that. However, if someone were to say, wow, I just had twins and it hurt, I'd have to be like, I don't know what that's like. I have no frame of reference for understanding what it's like to give birth to twins. Some of this is just basic epistemology, and it's stuff that even in our own tradition, even in the Reformed tradition, you see people like Herman Bavinck who talk about the various ways in which knowledge, come to us, and how important it is for us to be aware of it. I think that there's an extreme that happens in either side of this, where on the one end you have epistemological hubris that says, of course I can know and explain and understand everything that you...
What? His speech is on the left side. Whatever he's referencing is on the left side.
Yeah, he keeps referencing and stuff. Yeah.
Are going through and see, and I have no blinders. And then you have an extreme epistemological suspicion and skepticism of all truth. And I'm not arguing for either of those. I'm saying that what we can say, and the Bible doesn't argue for either of those, but what it does say is that there are certain things that people who are marginalized and oppressed are going to catch and experience by way of their lived experiences. That's not to say, and ironically, even the very people he's quoting, some of the greatest influencers in my own thinking on race have been white people. So it's not that that critical theorists like Jean Stefanchik, who is white herself, who's writing this, they're not saying that it's impossible for someone to understand something and move in that other direction, and you have to just be an oppressor, and that's your own state. But it is saying that there needs to be room made for the value of an epistemology that says that we need to listen. So we need to listen to people whose perspective from being marginalized and oppressed by this racist system that has existed since for the last several centuries.
Of experience.
Okay.
So
thoughts on what he just said?
Huh?
What about what he just said?
So he's talking about like, and this is a tenet, and it's connected to relativism too. Like the way you view your lived experience is valid, and it's true to you. It's like they were saying, like he said, if you give birth to twins, like how can a man understand that?
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
Which is true, but the issue is there are multiple, almost infinite amount of ways you can process or interpret that experience.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's where it's like we have to trust in God. And so we can lie to ourselves in how we process that. Right? That's the point. It's our filter. What filter do we have to process these things? So that's why we can't just, like, we can acknowledge people and how they feel, right? Because a lot of times that's where the lie gets in. It's through the process, right? And then they hold on to these ideologies. That's like, happens all the time, right? We hold on to these ideologies, these traditions, these superstitions, because that's what they are. Ideologies, they're superstition traditions that make sense to me, and I create in my life. That's where the false religion is, right? And that's where God comes to break those things. Those are the parasites. So it's like I can't just like listen to somebody and see, this is the issue. These people are getting put on pedestals because they've had these lived experiences and they've learned a bunch of stuff and how to process it, which is.
But the problem that I have with that is that when I see that these people are being put on a pedestal to force a whole nother agenda, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the religion,
right? But
you know what I mean?
But this is what I'm saying, like, and I feel like people don't realize that they're just being used as a pawn of a greater form of enslavement. You know what I mean? Did you guys, just, not to sidetrack, but this is along those lines, did you guys see that story about the woman? I saw this on YouTube, and I first saw it from someone promoting it. It was a woman from Nevada who was facing eviction because of the eviction moratorium. You know what I mean? So all this stuff is culminating right now because of the eviction moratorium deadline ended, and the Supreme Court said that you couldn't extend it because it wasn't constitutional. All this stuff because
the CDC, which is not a governmental authority,
and Biden tried to do it anyway. You know, going against the Supreme Court. So CNN does this whole story on this woman from Nevada who has 3 kids, who's getting ready to lose her apartment, hasn't paid rent in probably a long time, you know. And this is the other thing. The other side of it is that, like, a lot of people view landlords as like these billionaire companies that just own properties and they're just getting over on people. They don't realize that most landlords are just like regular business people, or sometimes just people that have extra properties.
And they invested in properties.
If you don't pay them rent, then they're out of pocket. You know what I mean? So this woman goes on CNN. They do this whole story on her talking about how she's got 3 kids. She works as a dealer at a casino, and she hasn't paid her rent in so long. I don't know why. I guess because of COVID, but she's still working. You know, the casinos are open. So, you know, they do this whole story to push the eviction moratorium narrative, like why we should extend this. she ends up raising $220,000 or so. I think even more than that on GoFundMe.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then a couple days later, it just comes out like the mother of those kids was on another podcast and was like, those aren't her kids. Those are my kids.
Yeah. She wasn't the actual mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear
and
about
that
this.
like she is making all this up, and she put my kids on TV without me knowing about it because my boyfriend, my baby dad is her boyfriend. So this is all a scam. You know what I mean? And so she raised all this money on GoFundMe. CNN put her on. Do you think that they corrected that?
No.
Do you think that they care that they used a black female and her black children? You know, they used the heartstrings of because there's people that donated. There was one lady that donated $15,000 to this girl. You know what I mean? Just because she felt bad. Because what's the time that we live in now? Like, you gotta help these people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
times.
And this is what I'm talking about. Like, they use your narrative. They use your struggle. They use what you're going through as a pawn to push agendas.
Yeah. Because what happens when you don't pay the landlord? Now the landlord can't pay his
property taxes.
So
can't pay his mortgage.
Now he gets in default.
Right. Now
Who
he's
comes
in debt. Who's going to come in? The big corporations are going to come in and
that
buy
you
up.
actually hate.
They're the ones that
They're
get
the
the
ones that's
benefit
gonna
because they're
come
going to buy up these properties from the banks for cheap.
You'll own nothing,
and you'll be happy.
And you'll love it.
Yeah. But this is what I'm saying. So when you see, this is the problem that I always have with it, is that I see this happening. I saw this happening with the George Floyd situation, the riots. I see this happening with all of this critical race theory stuff. Is that like they're just using it to push in these policies that are gonna benefit or push us in the direction that you don't really want to go in.
Yeah. And then it's going to be, how did we get here?
Right.
Yeah. And they use the narrative to pull people's heartstrings.
Yeah.
They use the narrative to get people to feel a certain type of way.
Yeah.
You know? And it's a manipulation.
Yep.
Show us the lie.
And even if it's valid, like you still have to weigh it in the right way.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of like the next video, like because it's about the story and the narrative. You know, and how, like, even if it's real, like that it has to be reconciled.
Right.
You know, it can't be just like you're reconciling it the way you want to reconcile. No, it has to be reconciled in the only way. You know, in the truth, the way, the truth, the life.
Right.
Or else you're a thief and a robber.
Scamming people out of $220,000.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I bet they won't get that money back. GoFundMe.
Nope.
They shutting down, you know.
Yeah, they shut down a bunch of stuff.
Other things, but
yeah. No, it's that
they not shutting
she
that
actually when it came out, she actually did an update on the post on GoFundMe and said, yes, these aren't technically my kids, but they're my boyfriend's kids and they see me as their mother. So technically I'm not lying. So if you want a refund, I'll give you one. But, you know.
Give me my money.
Right. So, all right, let's play this video.
I've experienced it. This has been my life. I was 6 years old when I came alive to race.
Right.
I remember where I was standing in the apartment in front of my mom and her boyfriend when I realized at 6 years old, no CNN, no critical race theory,
no Hillary Clinton,
no liberals. 6 years old, I looked my mom dead in her face and said something to the effect, "It is not my advantage to be black." It's not.
No, he didn't say
said,
that.
"Mom,
At
my
6 years
advantage."
old. 6 years old.
The black kids have to sit at one table, and the white kids sit at another table. We're always policed. We're thrown out of the classroom. I'm
How old is
spanked every
6 years old at the time. Oh, how is he now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
single day. I know it's not that I'm a bad kid. My mom was like confused. Why is he always in trouble? Every single day his teacher has something negative to say about him. But at home, I'm minding my manners. I'm doing my chores. I'm a firstborn child.
This sounds like a very one-sided look at how
Jussie Smollett.
right. This sounds like this is his version of how things went. But I can attest that I was made aware of race at the very same age. I told the story on here before. I tell it all the time. I wrote a paper on it in college about when Nick Gator called us the N-word. The first time I ever heard it, I was 6 years old, you know what I mean? Because he said he's not allowed to play with us, you know what I mean? And I remember the effect that had on me. It did have an effect where it was like, I didn't understand it, you know what I mean? And then in my household, my mom, my dad, like, I never even took it to them. I didn't even think to be like, what is that? Right. What does that mean? Like, what is the problem? You know, I just kind of was like, oh, that's the world we live in? You know what I mean? Like, it just kind of hit me in that way where it's like, okay, so people out here are like, don't like each other. Like, it put this weird dynamic in my mind at that time as a young kid. But, you know, I can't view my whole life through that lens though.
That's yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to stay in the same
and
spot.
Not only that, I've interacted with other people throughout the years that aren't. So it never was like, well, everybody's the same. It was like, because if someone interacted with one black person that robbed them or something or beat them up when they were a kid and they thought that all black people were criminals, you can't think that way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I took the approach of saying like, well, all white people must be racist, all white people must deep down inside think like this, it wouldn't make sense because I've interacted with so many other ones after that point. And plus, like, a bunch of our other friends were white. So it's like, no, it's just you, dude, and your family. Like, y'all are on some other shit. You know what I mean?
I don't think he's saying it in that way.
Okay.
He's saying it more like, this is the stuff I had to deal with.
Okay.
And this caused me a lot of trauma in my upbringing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What I'm saying is I didn't process it as trauma. You know what I mean? Like, it did make me think like, oh, what is this? But then immediately I was like, oh, it's you and your family. You know what I mean? Like,
because you have others around them.
Right. Right.
You didn't process it. Yeah, but
Right.
people do.
But this is what I'm saying. That's why you said there's a million ways
to see it.
To see something.
Right.
An experience. Like,
right. And that's actually the lie that gets in.
Right.
Right. Because if you are dealing with trauma, then you're actually a victim to a lie.
Right.
That has come in and infiltrated your house.
Right.
You know. So that's and we all are victims to those things. That's why we need Jesus.
Yep.
Firstborn children are often rule followers and are trying to please their parents and live up to expect. My mom knew that's who I was. My family knew that's who I was, but that's not who I was being portrayed as school.
Right.
At school, I was not being portrayed that way as when the teachers talked to my mom, and it hit me. I was going through, crying daily, not just because I was getting spanked almost every day because I was getting bad marks every day, but I also was never allowed to go into
What school was he going to where they're spanking kids?
I think when he got home, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was gonna say.
I was about to say,
Catholic
like,
school
was
back
he
then.
in? Maybe he grew up in another country. Because I know James, Liz, my wife, like they got smacked in school. They got hit. You know what I'm saying? They came up in that era where that was still legal. You know.
treasure box. I was 26 years old, talking to my wife as she was dropping me off at the airport, and I broke down in tears as a grown man, saying, all I wanted to do was be seen as equal, and get to go in the treasure box, and I did something good. That's all. I mean,
You hear what he said?
Be trying
Get to go in the
win
treasure
approval
box.
of
No,
my
but
teacher.
he's saying that he's at 26, married. He's saying this,
Right.
and breaking
his
down.
wife, yeah.
Right. Okay, I'm just making.
Yeah,
sure.
no, I heard that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just could not do it. And I again, like I said, I was 6 years old. I remember where I was standing when I was talking to my mom and her boyfriend. I said, it must not be good to be black. Can I be white?
Right.
6 years old. And so I'm bringing that to the conversation. And I'm also bringing the fact that these things are widely experienced by other folks, and that it's a perpetual issue that I keep running into the current day. All of that's a high context for me. I have a high context to this conversation.
Yeah.
But the heart for God and the heart for his people and the heart and the belief in his promise that he will indeed redeem the entire cosmos.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
That's a word.
Leads me to say, though I have a high context and you have a low context to this.
Right.
All you hear is you're calling me the KKK and complaining about everything. That there's a sacrifice that I'll take even in that, brother, and say, your ignorance is not going to become the occasion for my hate, for my dismissal of you,
Amen.
for my attacking you, for my sort of, getting at a place where I'm trying to slander. No. I'm still going to love you.
Right.
That's powerful, brother.
Oh, yeah.
That's powerful. It's a powerful thing you just said to us.
Amen.
Thank you.
And I think it's a word for us today. I'm going to give you the last word, brother, and then we will. We're going to conclude the podcast.
I appreciate that.
I think the way he's saying it though is like out of his own, like the way he's viewing it is out of his own love. He's going to love him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it goes. Well, we'll keep going because it kind of goes along that same line.
Okay.
KB, I know that stuff's hard. And it's painful. It's so challenging to know that racial trauma follows you all the days of your life.
Yeah.
Now, the Lord is also healing and liberating. That's right. And redeeming. That's right. But as you were sharing, I was thinking about that same teacher from the 6th grade who said, you're only here for racial diversity numbers. That haunted me. I wondered, did I only get into Grove City for racial diversity numbers? I wondered, did I only get into Texas A&M for racial diversity numbers? I won a teaching award at Baylor. I wondered, did I just win it for racial diversity numbers? I won a dissertation award. I wondered, did I only win this for racial diversity numbers? And I remember walking across the stage. I'm about to get what's called hooded, which is not KKK kind of hooded, right? This is when you get
You're not about to be a grand wizard. That's not what is getting ready to happen.
That's right. Not at all. So when you get your PhD, when you walk across the stage, there's what's called a hooding ceremony. So they put on that part of the regalia that's the hood piece, and it's a very powerful moment. But as they're calling my name, and the person that announced actually got Cartagena right. I was like, yo, this is great. This like pretty much never happens.
Yeah.
But as they're calling my name, I'm walking across the stage and I go, did I only get this because of racial diversity numbers?
Wow.
And I remember ceremony's done. I'm embracing my mom, my dad, and my abuelos are there. My abuelo. And my mom comes up to me and she says, we showed that 6th grade teacher, didn't we?
Message.
Wow. Here's what I want you all to see. For both of us, that racial trauma kept on keeping on. Right? So there's an important sense in which we were still beholden to this racist metric.
Yeah.
Right? And still struggling to experience some of the celebration, some of the freedom because of what that one teacher did to me. Over the course of an entire school year. Wow. And one of the reasons I want to share that is because I think it's so important in these discussions to, as you were saying, to realize we're coming from different perspectives, but the call is going to be in different life experiences. The call is going to be to love our neighbors in their particularities. So some of us are going to have to love on some folks that are like me and KB, and we're like, well, all right, hold on. Tell me, what was it like to grow up as you grew up? What's it like to be the recipient of so much racist abuse? And others are going to be more like, man, and they're like, I don't get this at all. And the call's going to be, okay, tell me about, you had asked, tell me about your story. How do I love and support you? What are the things you see that I don't see? What are those things you're not seeing that I do see? And we're called to journey with one another. I'll close this way then. You see what I'm saying? It's very much in a Pauline register, isn't it? If one part of the body hurts, the whole body hurts.
Yes.
As Christians, we don't get to say, well, I'm just going to take care of me and mine. Our call is to love all in the body of Christ. Our call is to love all of our neighbors. And this requires patience and understanding, a constant requesting of the Spirit to give us wisdom, to know how to navigate all these forms of racial tension, all sorts of forms of organized forgetting. Not because we want to have more info, right? Who cares about being a clanging gong? In fact, that's what we don't want to be. We don't want to be puffed up with knowledge. What we want is understanding that we can love God and neighbor better.
Do it, man.
It's not the. What was the feedback for at the end? There?
That's their own little sound.
Oh, okay.
Mic drops.
Oh, okay.
So you see, like he's like, I went through. Did I get this award because of racial diversity numbers? Did I get this because of, and then the other guy, there's there's trauma that's there, and it follows, and he says it follows you.
Yeah.
You know, but that's where, first of all, like, we're looking at these things to validate us, right? These structures that are actually institutions that don't mean anything.
They don't mean anything.
They don't mean anything.
They hold no value.
But we hold value.
Right. We give them value. Yeah.
So now we're looking at that as how we equate our life.
Right.
Which already is skewed. Like, before we even get to how did I get this for rape, I'm already looking at this as a validation.
Yeah.
And does it validate me if I've been given a help?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's before you even get there, you're already set up.
Right.
Right. And then that's why there's deliverance. That's why there's freedom in God. Like, truly. You know, and I get the hurt, and I'm not negating what people go through. I'm not negating that. But what I'm saying is that there's deliverance in God. There's freedom in God, right? And that freedom is not through understanding somebody else.
Right.
It's through understanding God. Like, and that's where, like, you don't have to understand somebody's whole story. All you got to know is what they feel and what's there, and then how they can be delivered from it. Right. So I just wrote this down real quick, because the love of Christ doesn't come through understanding the world and those who live in it. So it doesn't come through understanding the world and those who live in it better, right? It doesn't come because we start focus on other people better.
Right.
Right. It comes where we see the people and we see the need, right? We see the need, and then God gives us the understanding for the need. He gives us the power, or the anointing to deal with the need. So the love of Christ is what passes all knowledge, right? It passes all understanding. What does Christ mean? It means Mashiach. And what is Mashiach? It's the anointing. It's the anointed one that breaks the yoke of bondage.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? It's the anointed one that breaks the yoke of bondage. So when you even say the love of Christ, you got to know what that is. It breaks the yoke of bondage. So if I'm not loving somebody with that love, then my love is pointless. You know what I mean? And I can be compassionate in somebody's issue, but I have to love them with that love. Do you want to be set free? Somebody can talk to me all day about how they feel about something and how real it is. But the bottom line is, all right, do you want to be set free?
Yeah.
That's where the power of God is.
Are you ready to let go of that?
Are you ready to let go of it? And sometimes we're not ready. Sometimes we hold on to it. Sometimes we feel justified in holding on to it. And no amount of me trying to understand you is going to let go of that justification, because that justification will keep you in bondage. And that's the issue I'm seeing when I'm hearing guys like this talk and connecting their stuff to critical race theory. Because that's, like, I didn't show all that, but that's what they were basically talking about. And then they're connecting it to the gospel as an understanding of how we can understand people, which no.
Yeah.
We don't see through those lenses.
You get in the weeds with all of that.
You get in the weeds.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Dylan LaRock. He was watching on YouTube. I didn't check the YouTube comments, so he was commenting earlier, tuning in, and I think he was commenting on all those lives on TikTok.
The culmination of videos.
Yeah. But shout out to him. Y'all know who Dylan is, right?
Yeah. Tall Dylan.
Yeah, James's boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the point of the church. You know what I mean? The point of the church is to be able to carry that love of Christ, right? And when we there's a greater love, and when we tap into that, then we begin to know it, right? And I want to read the scripture. Ephesians 3:7, it says, of this gospel, I was made minister according to the gift of God's grace. And I just want to say, like, gospel, like when we say these words, they lose their meaning because of the misuse. And then they become like regurgitation and we want to throw up.
Have our words lost their meaning because we heard it all before.
We heard it all before. So it's like when somebody says it, every trauma of the wrong way of hearing it comes back to me that makes me want to throw up hearing things like the gospel.
Right.
You know, because it's been so misused.
Going numb from overload.
Right. So when he says of this gospel, he's saying of this good word that I've received. You can't receive that without coming into God's rest. Right? You can't really receive his good word. His good word is his good seed. So he's saying, like, think about this. You got to preach the gospel, you have to have something given to you by God. And you had to go in to get it.
Yeah.
You had to enter in. There therefore remains in entering into his rest. You can't receive it. So a lot of people are preaching without really any seed. You know what I mean? They're preaching without any word that they've received. Anything to truly plant in somebody's heart, right? So he's speaking good news. So he's speaking from that standpoint. He says, of this gospel, I made a minister. And what is a minister? You know, like it's just crazy. These words lose their meaning. I become a minister is somebody like who is attending to you, right? Attending to your wounds,
right?
Attending to the things that you need help in or you need a healing in, you know, according to the gift of grace, which was given to me by the working of his power. See, that's his power, not my own, right? And so it's always his power. To me, though I am the very least of all the saints, this grace was given to preach to the nations or the Gentiles or the races, right? To the unsearched riches. And I'm saying races on purpose because we are different races that he's bringing into one new man, which he talked about in the previous verse, the previous chapter, right? This one new man where you reconcile every race. That's what Jesus came to reconcile every race. So if we're so focused on race, how can it be reconciled?
Right.
Right. But he's saying here, and so this grace was given to preach to the Gentiles, to preach to the nations, to go to these different nations, the unsearchable riches of Christ, of the Messiah, where the power is to break the yoke, right? That's where the real riches are, where the true value is, where the true worth is, what you can't get if you don't go in, if you don't receive that grace, right? It says, and bring to the light of everyone what is the plan of the mystery for the world in God, who created all things, so that through the church, the manifold wisdom of God might be made known to the rulers and the authorities in heavenly places. So these are the powers, these are the principalities, not on earth, but in heavenly places that rule. So literally it's about people are subservient to this wisdom, right? That you see critical race theory. That's a wisdom, right? These are all things that are being blown on you, whispered in your ears by like what your own desires, right? So that's it's other spirits, right? That are whispering in your ears. And God is saying, I'm dealing with all those things, right? I'm dealing with all those things. But we're not warring against flesh and blood. We're warring on a higher plane. That's why it's about the powers and principalities. But it's the church's job to do these things, to make it known. So how do we come into this mystery of this wisdom? We have to go to that greater love, right? So this is what he's talking about. And then he says, this was according to the eternal purpose that he has realized in Christ Jesus our Lord. So he's kind of breaking it down. This was part of the promise, the purpose. This was hidden in him, right? And then he says, in whom we have boldness and access with confidence through our faith in him. So how do we have access? Through our faith in him. So I ask not to lose heart over what I'm suffering for you, which is for your glory. So we got to look at it from this perspective. Paul is in jail.
Right.
Paul's suffering.
Right.
And people are like, well, if he's going through it,
right.
You know, like what's going to happen to us? Like, how does this make sense to me?
Yeah.
Right. Like the man that he is, like, how is he? And he's showing them, no, it's through my suffering.
If he's a man of God, why is he in jail? You know.
Right. All these things, like, yo, if he's such a man of God, you know, somebody could say, why is he going through this? You know, that's a suffering, and it goes back to Job, right? It goes back to Job. Well, if you were if you didn't do anything wrong, and if you're favored by God, then why are you going through this, right? So it's that same mentality that we're dealing with, right? And he's like encouraging them and saying, no, this is for your glory. And he says, for this reason. So he's saying, for this reason, because for the reason that you don't lose heart in what I'm going through, I bow my knee before the Father, for whom every family in heaven and earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant to you, being strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, have strength to comprehend or to understand with all the saints what is the breadth, what is the length, what is the height, the depth, to know the love of Christ. So going back to it, to know the love of Christ, which is the thing that sets free, which is the thing that breaks the yoke, that surpasses all knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we can ever ask or think, according to the power that works in us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus through all generations forever and ever. So this is like a clear-cut picture of God wants to empower the church, but we can't misinterpret how we view the suffering that we're going to go through, right? We can't misinterpret it because we're gonna go into depression, right? We're gonna lose heart, and that's the point. This is what's that's the attempt that's happening right now.
That's the trauma,
to get us to lose hope, and then we get caught up in the way the world is working, and the bottom line is, as Christians, you come out of the place where you can even see God, right? Because you're tainted by the world, right? That's why it says, blessed are the poor, for they will see God, right? Because through the testing, you get purified, right? Through the testing, through your suffering, you go through purification and sanctification. It doesn't happen if you don't go through the suffering. Wow. So when we're always viewing our suffering as injustice, we're not seeing it in the right way, right? You know what I mean? We're not seeing it in the right way, because everything that was used for evil against us is going to be turned around for our good. Right. And that's the bottom line of this. It's not going to happen through us understanding somebody's suffering.
Right. Or wanting to show someone their blame in our suffering.
And then how we care for them in that. No. It's let's take the lead in suffering. That's what Paul did. Right. Paul took the lead in suffering. He was like, no, look at my suffering, because it's going to be for your benefit.
Right. I mean, that's the same thing Jesus did too.
Exactly.
Right.
And he said, I am the least of them.
Right. The least of the saints. Right. All right.
You can do it too.
That's a good place to wrap it up. That was good. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate each and every one of you. We appreciate all the comments. Let's keep sharing this. Let's keep getting this conversation out there, because so many people are being drawn into these fights, these arguments, these debates, and it's just a bunch of weeds, you know. And the bottom line is, we all know what the answer is.
Forgive us, Father.
Yeah. And we're just trying to point people back to that answer. So please share this video, hit the like button, go to our YouTube channel, you know, subscribe on there, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Also, don't forget, if you want to support this, if you want to support what we're doing, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/youngliontv. You can go on there. You can subscribe to become a member on there. You can hit us up. This guy keeps pulling up the wrong screen. Yep, there's the Patreon right there. Please sign up, guys, if you haven't already. Shout out to all the people that have. We really appreciate you. Also, Jatan.com for merch, for music, all of the latest stuff that we're doing on the music front, all of our shows and everything. We're working on some more shows, so hopefully we can see you guys out at an event. And I think that's it. You can log on to Patreon. I think we're going to do a Patreon clip. So if you guys want to log on to there, you can see the exclusive content.
The extra.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hopefully this outro works.
Love you.
We're out of here.
Young lion, you rich, yeah. This kingdom has rule.